Good afternoon, everyone. A little before 10 a.m. this morning, one of our child protective investigators was at a residence on Mook Street investigating a child abuse call. As she arrived, she came in contact with a 15-year-old who is known to the victim of the investigation that she was conducting. The 15-year-old started to become irrational, became irate, and she felt extremely uncomfortable, so she retreated back to her car. As she was sitting in her car, he became even more irate and began punching and kicking the car that she was in. She exercised great judgment and decided to exit the scene. Unfortunately, she drove down the end of Mook Street where it was a dead end and was forced to have to turn around. As she turned around and in an attempt to exit the area to get us to a safer place where she could call for assistance, the 15-year-old jumped on top of her car, on the hood of the car, and began punching and kicking the windshield. She fled away, called for backup. Within a few minutes, a few deputies showed up. One was a Corporal John Seal. He's 46 years of age. He's been employed with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office since 2000. As he gets on scene, he sees the 15-year-old in the middle of the roadway with a rifle underneath his chin, the muzzle pointed towards the bottom of his chin, and he immediately begins trying to de-escalate the situation, ordering the 15-year-old to drop the rifle, drop the rifle, drop the rifle. He refuses to drop the rifle and instead turns and makes an aggressive move towards the deputy, at which time the deputy was forced to fire several rounds. The individual, the 15-year-old, was not struck. Fortunately, the 15-year-old decided at that moment it was in his best interest to surrender, and he did so peacefully and without further incident. He was then taken into custody. The 15-year-old was transported to the hospital, and it's from injuries that we believe at this point were sustained from him being so violently and striking the child protective investigator's vehicle. The 15-year-old individual does have a criminal arrest history. He's been arrested for armed burglary. He's been arrested for grand theft auto. He's been arrested for felony criminal mischief, and he's been arrested for domestic violence. History of calls for service at this residence that we responded to today. We've been there for runaway juvenile calls. We've been there for nonviolent domestic calls. And again, we've been there for various child protective investigative calls for service. There is no threat to the public at this time. And again, the details that I do have are extremely preliminary, but I will try to answer any type of questions that you may have at this time.
Do you think, is he involved in the investigation? Is that why you think he was upset? Or is it just because he knows these people and he was upset that they were even there looking into it?
This 15-year-old is known to the victim of the complaint that we were investigating. That's all we can confidently say at this time. Yeah, the child protective investigator described it as extremely violent. She's extremely shaken, emotionally moved, as an individual jumps on the top of your car, and you guys have seen the damage to the front of the car and the side of the car. Extremely violent, I guess, is the best way to describe it. I'm sorry? We do not at this time. Like I said, just still too extremely preliminary at this time. That certainly will be a part of the investigation that we will follow up with now. That will be determined once he is interviewed, and that hasn't even happened yet. He was immediately transported to the hospital. At that point, it's making sure he receives medical treatments for his injuries. Once that's completed, then we'll make that determination throughout the interview.
Last question.
Is he still considered a juvie because of all the altercations he's had, and I guess the convictions and charges he's had in the past? At this point, is he still considered juvenile?
That's unknown right now. for this press right now, we just wanted to get the details out. We don't have those as of yet. I'm sure later on we will put that out, additional details to follow. Just right now, we wanted to put out what we confidently can say that we do know at this time. Correct. Unfortunately, because it involved a child abuse call, I'm not able to say it at this time. So, unfortunately, I can't talk in further details about that as well. But he is known to her.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.